Good evening and welcome all here at Evangelical Lutheran for this presentation. I'm just absolutely humbled and honored not only for the fact that you came on Sunday afternoon, and I'm sure you all have probably better things to do, but also am very grateful for all the support, whether it was via prayer or financial support or in any other way, cards and just very kind and supportive words. Obviously, the whole situation that is happening right now in Eastern Europe, it's horrifying. It is still something that I almost have to pinch myself just to believe that it is happening, but it is happening and it is very real, even though every once in a while you'll see social media posts that say it is not. But that is the world that we live in. So again, just wanted to say thank you for your support, and a special thanks to Pastor Dennis, who held down the fort while I was away, and then the biggest thank belongs to my wife, Andrea, because she held down the fort at home, and the kids, and also thank you for supporting her while I was away. But I love you, honey, and I really appreciate you doing what you do. So I prepared some slides, some pictures. I feel like the pictures tell the story the best, and so as we'll go through them, I'll be sharing a little bit about them. Again, apologize that, of course, one screen is not working. I'm not sure what happened. So if you can see that one, feel free to move around. But what I'd like to begin with is a reading that has been kind of my Lenten reading that I kept going back to. And again, because we are in a season of Lent, I came across of it. One of my colleagues in Slovakia, who's a pastor, posted it, and as I read it, it just kind of became my Lenten verse. And so I'd like to read that and then offer a quick prayer, but it's just something that really, as we are in this season of Lent, I think it's just a powerful piece of Scripture. So it is taken from Isaiah 58, verse 6 through 12, and this is what Isaiah writes. Is not this the fast that I choose? To loose the bonds of injustice, to undo the thongs of the yoke, to let the oppressed go free, and to break every yoke? Is it not to share your bread with the hungry and bring the homeless poor into your house? When you see the naked, to cover them, and not to hide yourself from your own kin? Then your light shall break forth like the dawn, and your healing shall spring up quickly. Your vindicator shall go before you. The glory of the Lord shall be your rear guard. Then you shall call, and the Lord will answer. You shall cry for help, and he will say, Here I am. If you remove the yoke from among you, the pointing of the finger, the speaking of evil, if you offer your food to the hungry and satisfy the needs of the afflicted, then your light shall rise in the darkness, and your gloom be like noonday. The Lord will guide you continually and satisfy your needs in parched places, and make your bones strong, and you shall be like watered garden, like a spring of water whose waters never fail. Your ancient ruins shall be rebuilt. You shall raise up the foundations of many generations. You shall be called the repairer of the breach and the restorer of streets to live in. Let us pray. Lord God, we give you thanks for this evening, and we especially lift up this time before you as we are thinking of those who are in a really desperate place right now. The ones who are currently in Ukraine, who are hiding because their homes are being destroyed. The ones who are trying to flee but are afraid whether they will make it into safety. All the women and children that already made it out of Ukraine but are still wondering what the next day will bring. We lift them all before you in this time as we are here to share about what they're going through, and we pray, Lord, that you will continue to watch over them, that you will enable us to continue to be in the best way we can a support for them, and especially for those who are either in Ukraine or around, that they can continue the good work that they're doing to help them. And we also pray for the world leaders, those who have the power to change this situation and establish peace, that you will stir within their hearts and change something within them so that we can have peace again. We ask all these things, Lord, in your most holy name. Amen. And I guess one group I did not welcome is the ones who are joining us. We are streaming live as well, so those who are watching right now also, thank you for joining us this way. All right, so the first thing I do want to just point out real quick is, for probably most of us now understand and know where Ukraine is, and I don't have a little pointer, but I'm assuming you can all see that big yellow area to the east is Ukraine. And Ukraine, for a lot of people, probably don't really know or understand that Ukraine is a rather large country. In fact, it's just a slightly smaller than state of Texas. All right, so Ukraine is about the size of Texas. There's over 40 million people. And then over there to the west of Ukraine, you can see the great and mighty country of Slovakia, all 5 million strong, and that's where I'm coming from, and that's actually where I spend 16 days of aiding and helping those who are fleeing Ukraine. So again, you can kind of see this is the Ukraine with some of the cities that you even can see down south, like Mariupol or Lviv, obviously Kiev, the capital, and you see the Russian border, Belarus up on top. And again, Slovakia, not the longest border, but yet still several border crossings through which the Ukrainian refugees were fleeing into safety. From what I've read last, according to the UN, it was, I believe, about almost close to 300,000 refugees that have 298,000 refugees that fled just to Slovakia. Okay, so it might seem, 300,000, that's probably not that much, but, when you look at a country of 5 million, and that's Slovakia, obviously Poland has the largest border, and they are taking the most. Overall, the number is close to 5 million people of total Ukrainians that fled the country. So that's, again, about the size of my home country. And then as of right now, this was March 23rd, 50,850 refugees applied for temporary protection, which means that they're planning on staying in Slovakia, right? So as you cross the border, you have a couple different options. One is that you decide to stay, and that you register within that country and apply for the status as that you are going to be here and you're not going any further. Now, early on, there were a lot of refugees who were coming in and then using, whether with Slovakia, Poland, and different more Central European countries as the transient countries, and they were fleeing to Germany and France and Great Britain and so on. That has been changing as more and more people keep coming. They're staying closer to the border, or the countries in the West are saying, well, we're kind of filling up our quota. We would prefer for people to stay east. So there are different factors that factor into this, but as of right now, it's about 50,000 people, which is about 1% of population of Slovakia. And I know that might seem a very small number, but 1% of your population is a lot of just all of the sudden come and receive as an influx of people coming from abroad. So this is kind of hard to see, but that line kind of to the right bottom corner, that's the border of Slovakia and Ukraine, and Vyšné Nemecké is the border town where I spend most of my time, and then Užhorod is a city on the Ukrainian side. It's a city about 130,000 Currently, there are about 300,000 people living there. So about half of that city, I mean, double the size of the city is just the refugee population, and then they're trying to cross into Vyšné Nemecké, and then from there further west. So you can see up in the top there is a Michalovice. It's a larger town that is kind of the largest, closest town to the border, and that's where a major kind of a refugee center is set up. There are tents, there are people where they can stay short-term or even long-term, medical and any kinds of services that they might need. And then below there is Pozděšovice, and that's actually the town where I stayed, and I would drive, it's about 30 minutes to the border. So just to kind of give you an idea, Pozděšovice is like the last Lutheran congregation to the border. The rest of them are mostly Orthodox, or Greco-Russian Orthodox, or the Reformed Christian Church. So preparing for the trip, there wasn't much of preparation, really. It was more just like I felt really cold that I needed to go and I needed to do something. But you can see these are some of the donations of the of ibuprofen and Tylenol that I brought, which I don't know why, but for some reason you can't just buy these in like at Walmart or Tesco or whatever, the supermarket. Most of you have to buy them in the pharmacy. So these are a great, I think it's just a simple painkiller, and yet they're hard to come by. So these were all delivered to a Red Cross tent at the border because Europeans like to regulate everything, and unless you are a medical provider, you cannot hand out even ibuprofen. So, but it did go to good hands, and I really appreciate those donations. And then this was another thing that I took with me, and they were just the little plush animals, and that was something we've been handing out at the border, especially for the children. As they crossed in, even just a little distraction, like, here is a toy. It couldn't have been big, it could have had to be small so that they can easily carry it. But you just right away saw the smile on their faces, especially for the kids. Here is, a juice box, something to eat, and a toy. So I took some, but then there were just bags and bags of toys from all over, not just Slovakia, but Europe. So this was, so I flew to Budapest, but then I stayed first night at my parents' house in my hometown. But right there we had people who were bringing stuff, and we were able to load up the van with different things. Here's just, you can see there were strollers and, anything and everything that you can imagine. And after 2 hours of sleep, we were heading east the very next day to the border. This is the pastor at my home church, Pastor Zuzana, and so we just loaded up whatever they were already storing at the parsonage. So as I said, most of the work, even before the trip, I was able to connect then with the, so it's always, I have to trouble to even say it. It was the ecumenical pastoral service of the Ministry of Interior of the Slovak Republic. It's a handful, but it's a mouthful, but it's also, they worked with the diacon of the Slovak Lutheran Church and the diacon of the Reformed Christian Church. So these three organizations came together, and because we were working directly with the Ministry of Interior, we were able to be as the only volunteers between the borders, meaning there is kind of like, I don't know what it's called, but there is like a no man's land, right? So you cross the Ukrainian border, and then there is an area where you kind of get processed before you cross the Slovakian border. So it was really powerful to be in that specific place. Well, first of all, you could only get there with a police or military chaplain, and we had to have 2 different IDs. But then we were the first ones that they encountered. So we had 3 different areas where we worked. One was for the buses, because you had one crossing where the buses were coming, and literally they came. You had a full bus get out. We were able to provide some what we call them care packages. It was water, it was tissues, it was a juice box, or like a little squeezy applesauce for the kids, and a little toy. and then some hot tea or water, because there were two 12-hour shifts. One started 8 in the morning, went till 8 in the evening, and then the second one started at 8 and went to another. Basically, you were there all night. So the volunteers that were staffing those places were there all the time. But the neat thing was that we were able to be there as kind of that first face, first welcome. And anyways, it's just, it's hard to even like kind of describe, because again, you have people coming by buses, by foot, and by cars. Those were the 3 different stations. Volunteers were organized through the bishop's office of the Lutheran Church in Eastern Slovakia, but what was so absolutely incredible is that the team of leaders that I was able to work with, these were some of the fearless leaders there, were absolutely incredible. I mean, the dedication, you work around the clock. As you can see, some are military, some are police chaplains, but some are just regular pastors or working for the diakon. And actually, of this in this picture, the leadership team doesn't include those 2 guys in the back. So you can see that the leadership team are all women, and which was absolutely incredible to see. And that you talk about organizing things day to day, and the things were changing day to day. There would be days where you have 10,000 people walk through that border crossing. Not every day, but some days it would be that much. So you have to adjust and you have to be flexible. And, so they were working hard and making all the decisions, and I was taking pictures. So, but... This is Lucia. She was really kind of in charge, working for the diakon, and truly just has all my respect. Yeah, anyway, so these were some. Every morning you'd started with the new volunteers. Some would return a couple times, but some would be there for just the day. So you had to orient them before 8 o'clock, and then off they went, right? And then the green tent behind us, that was the kind of our base, which was further away from the main crossing, and then there we had some supplies. There's actually, I think, the picture inside. It was heated, so you had beds, because sometimes people would come in, and then, most people would be bused right away to places where they can be sheltered, but not everyone was able to get on the bus or get the transportation, so some would stay overnight in these tents, and we provided some as well. And this is just, again, you would have people come, and we would try to help them in whatever way we can. I mean, sometimes it would literally be just walking in and say, we need to get to this place, right? Because we have, or we know someone, but we don't have a way of getting there, and so we try to arrange transportation, right? We would say, all right, well, why don't you come here? Here's something to eat, et cetera, et cetera. So just a couple of, just to kind of get a sense of what the crossing was, is you can see in the lower corner here, these pictures were taken by a reporter for the Lutheran World Federation. That's what the LWF stands for, and his name was Albin Hillard. A brilliant guy. I had a chance to spend 2 days with him, traveling and visiting a couple different congregations that were hosting. Again, he was reporting for the Lutheran World Federation, so that's why. But he, as a professional photographer, really was able to get that sense of what the crossing, specifically in Vyšné Německé, looked like. All right, so these are just some of the pictures that that he took while being there. The one thing that you'll see, and this is perhaps the most heartbreaking thing, that these are not selected pictures that I was specifically choosing these. These were 95% of them is the refugees that you're seeing are women with children. In fact, those are the statistics. Over 90% it was women and children. And the pictures, you can literally see it in the pictures. I mean, you can't make it up. This just gives you a good idea. A lot of times you would come in, you would register at a tent, and then from there, I mean, if you can really see, it's 1, 2, 3, 4. Those are 4 buses lined up, and the line went on, right? Because again, if you imagine 10,000 people coming in a day, you'd have to get them to the places where they were going. So this was kind of a daily site where you would see, and then there were different tents set up for different things, right? So this is on Slovakian side, so it's not between the border. And I don't have any pictures from between the border because we were prohibited to take any pictures there. But this was, you see, there was food and free food, Cooks Without Borders and other organizations. So as people were coming in, if you're cold, you just want to have hot soup, they were able to do that. Kind of to the right, you see it was a big semi truck. It was a medical truck, Red Cross, so people could come in if they needed any medical assistance. Just kind of give you a sense. There's a sign for soup, just a free soup. You can go, and what was neat, it wasn't just for the refugees, but anyone there. I mean, there were a couple hundred volunteers there every day, and they cook for volunteers too. So you could just come in and have food, because obviously everyone was there trying to help together. And so you just kind of can see, and especially children of all ages, but so many of them, very little. You would have 3 generations coming of grandma with mom and a child, and again, some of them would travel 5 days, right, without shower, without proper sleep. Those are actually the number 2 things that they wanted, even before food. We think like food is the first thing. If they had a chance, what they ask for is just to be able to take a shower and sleep and then eat. So even, again, you can see most people that would come on foot, we had some strollers available so that they were able to, get a stroller. These were the daily sights. You just saw the kids, and if you can see how they're dressed, it's kind of hard to imagine, although it was still cold outside. It was cold. It was cold, and especially at night. This is, you're talking a month ago, and Eastern Slovakia is much colder than here. So you saw these families coming in with, these are the toys I was talking about, right? See, I think that this little kid has like 3 of them, right? But again, it was just something to hold on to, something to grab. You can see there a little one dropping a toy. And again, you have the volunteers that you can see there in the vest. There are different organizations, but especially military and the fire department, which I was very impressed by. They were there, and as people were coming in, they were helping with bags, with luggage, with anything that needed to be carried, right? Especially those who are coming on foot. So you can see there is a person carrying the suitcase, and then taking it to, mostly to the buses. We have some Barbie dolls, right? Little things like that, which you would, for the children, it is so, I want to share a little bit later about that, but the thing is that when I talked to some of the moms, they said that for especially the younger kids, they said it's like an adventure for them. They weren't fully comprehending what's happening, right? And so what the parents did is that they tried to go along with that, So even just the idea of what must be happening on the inside as you're trying to be brave for your child and make the fact that you're fleeing country because of war like an adventure, a fun adventure. It just literally just tears your heart apart. But the kids were absolutely incredible, and you could almost tell how the parents and the moms and the grandmas were really trying to shelter them the best they could. There is a neat shot of just people hugging in the back. Sometimes you would have several families that would come together, and then they would unite there, and then from there they try to get together to different places. So you just see this was the kind of the main demographic, the little kiddos, and people trying to help in whatever way they can. Sometimes bubbles can again just make it as a more manageable. This was a lady that was there with a 6-month-old baby. They had to stay overnight in the tent, and then I was driving her and her family to a facility, a church facility. It was 3.5 hours away. But just to give you that idea of again. And then there were a couple. I wasn't part of that in any way, but we've had several babies born while I was there, right there at the border. Which I'm saying it is like a good thing, you know. I mean, a child being born is always a good thing, right? But you can imagine that this was happening right there at the border in the tents that were just, you know, heated with like gas or propane heaters. But and as far as I know, everyone was well and healthy, and all the babies that were born were taken care of. So this is the last one I wanted to mention from the border. This happened the day before I arrived there, but this was by the Ministry of Interior, posted on their website. This was the hero story. This boy is 11 years old, and he showed up by himself. He showed up by himself at the border, and when they saw him, you know, obviously the volunteers, you know, kind of took him in and, you know, gave him different things like food and drinks and all that. The story with this boy, 11 years old, again, showing up by himself, was that he had a number written on his hand for the people. I'm not sure if they were relatives or just people that he knew in Slovakia. And so he was communicating with the police saying, these are the people that I need to contact. And so there it is with the border police. And the good story was, there's actually the number written on his hand. And the good story was that they were able to locate the family when they called them. They were able to pick him up at the border, right? And I'm not sure how far he went, where he was coming from, but at 11, if your parents send you off with a number written on your hand, I mean, it just sends chills down your spine. And he wasn't the only one. There was another unattended or unaccompanied child who would not cross the border from between the borders because they were told that if you cross, you'll be put into a home. So they refused and stayed there now that was when I was already there. I think it was like 8 hours or something like that until the family or the relatives or acquaintances, whoever was picking up this particular child, until they showed up. They would not cross because they were afraid. They were told, if you cross and you do not have an adult with you, you can be taken right away and put to like an orphanage, right? So again, hard to comprehend, but those were just, you know, kind of the heartbreaking things that I was able to see. So the one part of my job was that I was in Pozdishovce, was kind of the main storage unit, and so there would be times where after a couple of hours of sleep, there would be a call and say, hey, there's a semi-truck coming, and we need to unload it. And there was another one came after that, and so that was something that, again, you know, I tried to help with. We had one truck came at 1:30 in the morning, so that's talking about shock to your system, and you got up at 1:30, unloaded, and then you went to bed at 3, and then got up at 6 to drive supplies or whatever else. So it was definitely a lot for, as far as kind of being on all the time. But here are just, again, some of the boxes. This was the pastor at the church in Pozdishovce, her church kind of took care of the storage unit. And then you would just load up whatever was needed for the border, take it to the border a couple times a day, depending on how much stuff they used, or sometimes we ran out of stuff, so we had to go and purchase specific things. And then another part was that we would then take the stuff to not just the border, but also the congregations and places that were already housing people. So obviously they would not need like the water or juice boxes, but they needed diapers and hygiene products and, that kind of stuff, strollers, blankets, and all of that was in that main storage place. So perhaps the most, I don't want to use the word like rewarding, but what was really powerful was when I had an opportunity to drive people. I only took a couple pictures because, again, it's the one thing you don't want to do when you are in situations like these is to take pictures. like you're, you know, in the zoo or something. Like these are real people that are hurting, that are going through some most traumatic things that they've ever experienced. And so that's why I'm very grateful for Albin and the fact that he, as a reporter, was able to take these pictures, but I took very few because of that. But after being in a car for a couple hours and after talking to different families, you know, I would ask then afterwards, it's like, is it okay if we take like a group picture, you know? And so they, then they would be like, yeah, no, that's fine. And again, you can just see 2 moms and 3 kids, right? This was the, and still is the norm. So this was a wonderful family. Now, talking about, they didn't know me, never met me, right? Actually, this family I picked up not in Vyšné Nemecké, but a different crossing. So I got a call, I went to a different crossing. I had to locate them, right? So I had the number, I had the names, we connected there through some translators. Then just, they had to trust my word, right? I loaded them into a 9-passenger Sprinter van and then drove them for 3 hours to this town in eastern Slovakia, where they were getting into another vehicle that of a man who was then, they were hosting them in this congregation. Now, this particular situation was arranged, again, the only time I would drive someone is when it was arranged through the bishop's office. They were kind of doing the logistics for that. So the assistant to the bishop actually met us there. Right, so it was, he said, this is the guy, you know, obviously I know him, and I connected the dots, and so the family, you know, you had to kind of assure them, saying it's okay. But they're still sitting, 5 of them, in, you know, getting into a vehicle of a man they've never met before, who is driving another 3 hours to a town in northern Slovakia, where they'll be staying for who knows how long. So again, it's just so, even just to fathom what that's like. You know, and yet when you look at the picture, you see the smiles, and it's not because they're not hurting. It's because the kids are there, and this is an adventure, and we're going to get through this. So after a couple of these, I would talk to these women, and I would say, please, please, please do not get into someone else's vehicle. Do not just, if someone's offering to take you somewhere, and you don't know where they're coming from, who they're working with, if they don't have any, you know, if someone you don't know is not arranging this, do not get into the car. The one mom I was talking to, she was kind of British. She's like, you mean like we got into yours? I was like, well, yes, but, you know, you saw me as a volunteer with a tag, and I picked you up at our tent, and, you know, so you could at least know that this is, you know, real. But there were situations and already stories, and still those stories we are hearing. The 2 major issues is sex trafficking and actually organ, harvesting, correct. Those are the 2 main ones. So you think of war as something that is, you know, you have bombs falling on your house. This is the other part that is happening, because especially early on, before the authorities catch up, and you have thousands of people coming in, it is the organized crime that is more organized usually than the government. And so I know that it has, I mean, there were stories you heard and you just didn't want to even, but I felt by the time I got there, it was very well organized, and everyone had to register first before they were connected with any kind of vehicle. And everywhere it said, do not accept any ride from someone you don't know, for obvious reasons. So even to the point that all of our volunteers had to be registered through the bishop's office. Again, that was our logistical center. They had staff that were working on that. So I was sharing with one group a story. I had a couple, a woman from Ireland and a man who spoke broken Slovak, but it just didn't feel right. They said, we're here to help. And I said, that's great. You need to, here is a link, you need to register, and then when they schedule you, you can come back. Oh, no, we just want to help. We can drive people, just let us know. We have money. And I said, yeah, well, after you register, then you can help. I mean, we'd love to have volunteers, but you need to register. After I kept pushing that they have to register, they just walked away. So it's like, maybe they just didn't want to register. I don't know. But it's just that kind of stuff that can happen. And so anyways, it was a wonderful thing when this was when I had an opportunity to drive people and to know that they were safe. This was another family. There's the 6-month-old baby from the previous picture, and we got to the place where they were staying, and then we were just having lunch together. So again, those were the most rewarding parts of where you can really spend time and more talk one-on-one. And this was another couple of those folks I brought. This was in my hometown. They were staying there, and this was after we brought them in. We got there at like 1 a.m. in the morning. Again, you talk about at night, you get out of the van, you go to a family's house that you've never met, right? But obviously everyone's just welcoming and all that. And then the next day we took them shoe shopping, just because, as you can see, there are some teenagers, some middle school age kids. The one in the front, her name is Carolina. She was 10. And I said, I'm taking you with me, because it's just, you just fall in love with them. They're just such amazing, these kids, they have spirit. They're just, again, but this was a really a powerful story. So we took these couple teenagers shopping, right, for sneakers, because they had like winter worn out shoes. And so we took them to this store, like a regular sports store, a large store. You had a full wall of sneakers, right? And I said, you can each get a pair of sneakers, right? So you can pick a pair of sneakers. There were 2 boys in that picture. They said, oh, no, thank you. I already have a pair. And I said, okay, well, I mean, that's fine, but you can have 2 pairs of sneakers. This is fine. I just, no, thank you. I already have a pair. And no matter how much I pushed, they would not take a second pair of sneakers. And it was for free. They were right there in front of them. And I said, I'll just buy them for you. I mean, it just literally just breaks your heart. Because I was thinking, like if I walk to a school, I don't know, maybe in Waynesboro, and I'll just randomly pick 10 teenagers and take them to Foot Locker and say, hey, just pick a pair, whichever pair you want. How many of them would say, oh, no, I already have a pair? I kind of, maybe there would be some, but it's just this incredible humility. And they were teenagers, and they had 1 pair of sneakers, and they would not take a second one. So when I hear posts and videos like they're not grateful enough or humble enough, it just completely, I just want to shake people that post that kind of stuff, because I haven't, seen more humble people. All right, so I'll go through these very quickly. As I said, I had an opportunity to spend a couple days with Albert Hillard, who was a reporter for Lutheran World Federation, just to kind of report about what is happening in Poland, Slovakia, Hungary, and Romania. And just the fact that I was able to accompany him, that was what kind of gave me an opportunity to see not just what's happening at the border, but what's happening beyond. What's happening in houses, in the facilities, church centers, where they already are hosting these refugees. And so these pictures just really tell the story. There were 2 families hosted by one congregation that had to flee. Their town was specifically being bombed with. They both have cerebral palsy, and so just the idea that you're running away with your child in the wheelchair. Right, they were helped by one nonprofit. They were able to get them to Slovakia, and they were hosting them there. And it was just absolutely incredible. Just beautiful people, visiting, talking about their stories. These were the first ones we ended up talking to, and the women said, we did not believe that Russia would attack. They said it was unthinkable. That everyone was saying that is not going to happen. And the gentleman there behind, who was the father, he said, I knew it was going to happen. He was the only person, actually, of all people I talked to who said, I felt like it was going to happen. So just an incredible love among these people, especially for the boy. He was really traumatized because they had to flee as they were bombing the town. And so his mom was saying there was a washing machine that was on like a spin cycle, and he heard it and went in complete panic because he thought they were bombing the place where they were at, right? So you talk about trauma that they're going through, and so even the little sounds like that can really, be traumatic. But we spent like an hour with them, and it was absolutely heartwarming and absolutely incredible. Then this was another facility. It was a big youth center, and we had, there. I don't know how many people were there. This looks like I was doing really well with that baby, but really the baby was like, oh, I don't want to have anything with the stranger. It was like wanting to go back to his to its mom. But again, just you see a young family with little children. This particular family, they were heading to Spain. They had they knew some people there, so they were just staying a couple days before continuing on their journey. And so we had some chance to interact with babies, but also this was Vladimir, an incredible ping pong player. I didn't stand a chance, but we had fun. And again, these are the things that you do just to bring any kind of normalcy into the lives of people. This was another facility, and you can see that these are just the donations, right? So you had every place, every church center would have their own kind of storage unit, and the close congregations or organizations that they would be by, they would then donate a lot of stuff directly to them. So that was kind of neat to see. These were just all volunteers. This one facility I think they have 60 refugees. It was kind of like a retreat center. And I remember Alden, this reporter from Sweden, he's asking, what's your staffing? Like you have, however many rooms, let's say 60 refugees, 24/7, right? You have the kitchen, you have the dining room. He says, what's your staffing? And they chuckled, and I was like, what's funny? And they said, we're all volunteers. There is no staffing. And so just, again, not all facilities, some facilities do have staff, but this particular one was solely run by volunteers. And again, I was like, oh my gosh, this is absolutely unthinkable. I've had a chance, again, just talk and visit, and it was really neat. Like in this particular situation, there were just all moms with their daughters, and we were talking about music. Like what are you going to talk about? Like you're not going to ask them like, is your dad alive? But that's probably what they're thinking about. But you were just talking about music, so I was asking what they listen to. One girl said Billie Eilish. I was like, oh, okay, I'm Billie Eilish. And then the mom said Spice Girls. I was like, oh, I know Spice Girls too. And then the daughter said, what's Spice Girls? I was like, oh, there's a generational little thing. But so, you had fun. You just talked, and again, the one lady there in the pink, she spoke English. You can see she was already, I don't know, explaining something very passionately. But it was just absolutely incredible to have an opportunity to talk. And these particular women, they came from different places, right? So you would ask them, so you know each other, right? And they were like, no, we've never met. We came from completely different parts of the country, and then as we came in and were processed, we all basically, here was housing, so we signed up for this particular housing, right? So just kind of, you can see you would say just like normal people, just like at any other time that you would just get together and visit, and yet that what's inside there, that it's a lot, and that they're going through something horrific. So this was perhaps my favorite place in Partizánska Lupča. Pastor Jan Molchan, this was the church I've mentioned several times. They've hosted, there's like 80 refugees, and again, the picture you just see, that's the demographic, right? You have moms and you have kids, right? This isn't staged. This is just who is there, right? And so he is the only guy. He was laughing. He said, I'm a single pastor. He's been there for I think over 10 years, and he said, so the women in the church keep telling me, Pastor, when are you going to get married? And he says, and now I have 6 women living with me and 13 children. So he, it's again, you have to make it light. But he said, I interact with these kids. And he posts some wonderful pictures on their Facebook page from the church. And then he said, and then I go to my house in the evening and I just cry. You just cry. You hold it in all day and then you just cry. Because, and again, with this particular place, he said already they figured out the cooking. They figured out, the cleaning. The refugees. So the volunteers who were there in the beginning, they're saying like, we're going to provide this and this and that, and they're like, no, we can do this on our own. So, as long as they have materials and all that. So, and this was the one group of people. Now, most of Ukrainians are Russian Orthodox, and so they brought an icon with them, which is a big part of their tradition. And so they brought an icon with them, and they've asked, kind of very hesitantly, they asked the pastor, he said, is it okay that when we come to worship that we can bring our icon with us? And he said, that very first worship, I put that icon on the altar, and it was right on the altar. And he said, I told them, this is your church now, just as it is ours. This is your church. And then he said later on, I moved the icon to the baptismal font. So it's actually sitting on the baptismal font because it's more forward, because as they come in, they bow. And then he said, it is a beautiful symbolism that we've talked about, that in baptism, right, we are all one. Right? We, as baptized children, we are baptized into one family of God, whether you're Lutheran or Russian Orthodox or Baptist, or doesn't matter what Christian denomination you are, we are one family. And so he said this is just a reminder that in this time, with these people who we've never met before, but yet we are one family. And again, he's dressed that way because we caught him between 2 services. So he said, I'm not going to even take this off. I'll spend a couple minutes with you guys, but then I have another service. So that's why he's dressed like that again. And then just a couple just pictures from that Albin was able to take. Again, just a brilliant photographer, but just, and this is the potato story. This was the potato story when he said, we needed potatoes. I posted something on Facebook, and within an hour, I had a couple sacks of potatoes. And I wanted to use this picture because when you, in the US, the sack of potatoes is about what? This big, right? You pick up in Walmart. So you see the sack of potatoes he received. I mean, this can feed literally an army for a month. So that kind of generosity you experience there. Again, this was another facility. We talked with the pastor there. That was me talking with her, with some of, again, moms and the baby in the back. And this is a verse that they had posted there. And we talked a little bit about that. I actually quoted that verse today. It was 1 John 4:20. This was on their, in their kind of a youth center where people were housed. And 1 John 4:20 says, those who say, I love God and hate their brother and sisters are liars. For those who do not love a brother or sister whom they have seen cannot love God whom they have not seen. And they've had that posted there as just, again, kind of a, it was, I think, a neat reminder. But what they were doing is literally what that verse says. So what was really neat about this story, and I know my wife was going to say, like, I'm going to do this when it's time. So that's why I'm not looking that way. I'm just kind of avoiding that. So here is this is an actual picture of what had happened here in this congregation. It's kind of all interconnected. There is the church center and the church and the school. They're all kind of this complex of buildings. And there was a fire at night. I think they say it was an electrical fire. And the refugee women that were housed, that were the only ones who were actually able to see that part of the building. The fire was actually in the school at night. they alarmed the pastor, and then they were able to get the fire department. They said if it wouldn't be for them, most likely the school, the church center, the church itself, everything would burn completely down. Because, I mean, you can see that's already a fairly extensive fire, but they were able to put it out. It was all over news, and it was just this really neat symbolism of, because everywhere you read it said the Ukrainian refugees saved basically a school and a church because, so they were kind of, the pastor was saying, if we wouldn't have been housing them, if we wouldn't be housing them here, we would no longer have church or school. And this was the last place that we visited, and I just loved this. Albin took a picture of it because a lot of people would kind of transition through, so they would put a little sheep on the Ukrainian flag there behind and would write the names of all the people that they had there in this particular congregation. So, and they would call them, these are our little sheep, So it was just really neat to see that. So you have different, colors for boys and girls, and then this was a young family with 3 children. So this was one of the few times where you had a father there, but again, because there were 3 children, little children, he was allowed to come. They were making some exceptions like that. And this particular story, which was really, this was just a little picture from their room. He was an attorney, and from what he was saying, rather successful, and he was saying, I'm starting a job tomorrow already. And I was like, what are you going to do? He said, I got a job at a sawmill. So just to give you an idea, and I said, wow, that's very different from being an attorney. And he said, you just want to provide for your family, and you don't want to be a burden. So that's why that picture and this particular family, so there were 2 guys from that facility that were already getting a job. And then here, these are pictures of some of the Slovakian volunteers. You can see those ladies there. They were just there. Cooking and hanging out, and so again, this was the pastor, and with the volunteers, the little girl was a Ukrainian girl. But so it's just kind of neat to see. So at the end, I made it back home. There's this picture. These are the folks that are being housed at my home congregation. This is the picture with the pastor, and I mean, you can see these are not necessarily, this is not a hotel room. Or you still are sharing a lot of space, right? So it's not like, when people say, oh, they're coming in and they're getting everything for free. Like, you're still living in a pretty Spartan facilities, for most of them, because people want to offer what they have. So you just kind of see, you have a little kitchen like that where they cook, right? So some of these, I mean, again, these are church facilities, so it's not like a Hilton that you're providing accommodations at. And then the same thing, kids and kids and kids everywhere. These were the 2 women at the Parsons. You see they're wearing like the work gloves. They were working with, there was all this, let's see, well, there were just some boys carrying milk. And then they had sheep, so that's a lot of fun, right? Always for the kids. And again, just a couple pictures from my hometown. But you can see they would help in any way they could, right? The pastor said they already raked the garden, but it's like garden like a couple acres. And they've done this and they've done that because they want to help. And so here they were piling up some wood for burning. And these are all refugees. Well, the gentleman is from Pribelce, but anyway, so, and this is kind of the final picture that I was able to take with the kiddos and the families. And so for some of our youth that are here, this was really neat. We've had youth write little greeting cards, and they did some in Ukrainian, which I didn't ask them if it was correct grammatically or anything like that, but it was still, so we were able to share, and I was able to share those cards and then translate some of them for them. And then it was just a really kind of a neat thing. And there's some of the teenage boys. And this was the last pic I took. But before we took this picture, this was really, really powerful. And I obviously we don't have a picture of that. But I said, is it okay if we just all get in a circle and hold hands? I'm going to say prayers. And I said, can anyone who wants to pray can pray, you know, and so it was so neat because, you know, I started to pray, and I guess in the Orthodox tradition, it just started to be, it was like buzzing like in a beehive. They were all like saying something, you know, like praying out loud, but in like Ukrainian, and it was just all of a sudden there was this really powerful moment, and then you had the teenagers who were like laughing or trying not to laugh, and I was like, oh, this reminds me, it's just like our youth in the U.S. And you say, let us pray, and like, right? So it was just so real, and you just felt, you know, God's presence there, and as you can see, there was just so much joy, and the relationships were already forming, and that's the pastor and her husband there in my hometown. Okay, so really, the big question is, you know, what's next? And I wish that we could just say that next week it's going to be all gone, there's going to be peace, and everyone will be able to return, and everything will be fine. You know, something tells me that is not going to be the case. In fact, for some of these people, there's nowhere to get back to. Their houses are gone, right? Their cities are gone for some of them. So, you know, the work is going to continue, and the work will continue. But what I've been thinking as far as, you know, what can we do? What is this niche that we can fill? What is the need? And you know, as I kept going back and back to is just this. It's children, some of them very young, and it's moms. And so what I want to focus on as we continue working with the local church and organizations, especially the diacon, you know, to figure out a way that we can be there for the children, giving them something that perhaps other organizations are not doing. Because whether it's the government, whether it's the, you know, providing the health care or other things, they're mostly focusing on necessities, right? You want to make sure that everyone is fed, that they're housed, that they're healthy, and so on and so forth. You know, but then what? The biggest thing is that there is this trauma that is there. And you can't see it, but it is there. And so we are right now in conversation with, again, the bishop's office, and just saying, okay, how can we, so you have about 50,000 people now just in Slovakia that are there to stay, and that number is going to, I'm sure, double. What can we do to accompany these kids who perhaps have lost everything, that we can give them some kind of sense of normalcy, bring maybe just a little bit of joy into their life, but also, you know, just because we are a church, also be able to share, right, the good news and to share the gospel with them. So that's kind of what we are talking about now, and figuring out ways that we can continue to work with the local churches and be support for these families. Okay, so I was going to speak for half an hour, which is perfect because I only I only doubled my time, but I'm gonna now. I have George here, my amazing helper, and so I would just want to open it up again for if there are any questions, and then we'll have some refreshments downstairs if you'd like. I know there's some cookies and some yummy stuff down there. But any questions? And George, if someone that raises their hand, you can take the microphone to them. There's Mr. Danny. So the Ukrainian and Slovakian language, I actually was surprised. It was closer than what I thought. It's hard to put a percentage on it, but I'd say I probably understood over 50%. So, you know, so you try to say the same thing a couple different ways, and you would pick up on it. And then there would be some words that you just were kind of like, I have no idea what you're saying, which is, again, okay. But I was able, between English, Slovak, and Ukrainian, actually communicate fairly well, especially if they knew a little bit of English. Yes, and I do not read Cyrillic, but they have like some, I don't know how they do it on their phones, it switches Cyrillic to Latin. So if, you know, I don't know, I'm sure it's an app of some sort, but they were able to do that. So we were communicating even with some of the people like that. They would write it down, and then it would switch from Cyrillic to Latin alphabet. Right, so that's kind of what I was saying. I think that right now, the biggest question is to really figure out where the need is, right? And again, I feel like our best impact is going to be working with the children that are there, whether it's through, maybe providing some counseling or providing, again, maybe a camp or two or something like that where they can come together and kind of forget certain right things that they've been through and maybe have a little sense of normalcy. I feel like that is going to be something that most government organizations or even churches are not necessarily going to be doing. And so I kind of want to say, it was in my life that it was through those kinds of things that I know my life was changed, a camp or people, inviting me over here and experiencing, some things like that I believe can really be impactful on children. So right now, as I said, we are in conversation just to figure out what organization would be the best to work with that we can partner with and, obviously support them financially, but also I would like to organize maybe another trip or two where we can go in person and spend some time with some of these refugees that are there long term. So that's kind of where we're at right now. We have already given a lot of money to some of the congregations that are hosting volunteers, and then some of the funds were spent for the supplies, like directly on the border. But I like if we can spend resources on people more than on stuff. And again, because there is a lot of funds that are being used to purchase whatever needs to be purchased or it's donated, right? So that's kind of what I'm praying about, and I'm hoping that we can do something along those lines. There's a question? George, in the back. I'm just going to ask you to say in the microphone, I couldn't hear.
The box. Like we were doing with the Christmas boxes. Can we do something like that to send over with the kids?
Yeah, I mean, and those are some of the things that we can talk about. The biggest challenge there is that anything you ship is you pay more for shipping than the actual content, and then another thing is or even if you take it with you, it's just those kinds of things are can be a little tricky. Not impossible, but so I feel what would probably make more sense is if we partner with someone there and say, hey, can we create and have this many boxes for Christmas, let's say, and then we can distribute them, but we wouldn't most likely be making them here and shipping them over there, if that makes sense, because it's the cost kind of a thing. But yeah, I think that's one of the ways that we can say, hey, we're thinking of you, right? And then they can be distributed. A question.
How did you handle other relatives, Ukrainian people that were living in other European countries, that would come there to try to find their relatives, or the vice versa, the refugees were trying to find them? Did you have a situation where you had a registration form if they were trying to claim certain ones?
Yeah, there were a couple of them where I was basically just, I drove some folks to a place where they were staying for one night, because from there on they were getting on the bus, and like the one family was going to Berlin, right? So yeah, we did some of that. It's again because they would need that connection ride, right? But it wasn't a lot of that. Mostly I would drive people to places where they were, that was kind of their final destination, right? They weren't going beyond that, or at least didn't have plans to. But there were a couple of them then that, yes, they would say, we know where we're going, we just need to get from this place to this place where we'll hop on the train to Berlin, right? Or Spain, right? Or different places. Yeah.
I'm just curious if you know if the chatter's true that they say 300,000 of these people are going to show up in Pennsylvania, and I'm wondering if you know there's a lot of outreach we could do here for those people if that's the case, and how would we go about doing that?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I thought I heard that there were 100,000 that were going to be allowed into United States. I thought that was the overall number, unless that has changed. And I think that if there is a way to be able to welcome some of the refugees here in our community, it would be absolutely incredible. There is a Lutheran Refugee and Immigration Services that I know that we would have contact with or could contact and find out more. But so I don't know about the numbers, but yes, I will be also looking into ways that if there are some families that, because they will be coming, some of them will be coming to the U.S., that if we could house and, have them here as a community. It doesn't have to be just one church. It can be, a community effort. I would absolutely love to do that. We had several refugee families that were resettled through, evangelical, well, I don't know, maybe decades back from when the war in Yugoslavia was happening. And I know they're here and they're valuable members of society. In fact, one of them is one of the best friends with my son, right? Which is just such a neat connection there. But yes, so absolutely, I think that is something to explore. And we should definitely do that. Okay. Georgie, there's a hand up.
Thank you. With war, unfortunately, the breadwinners of the family, the husbands and the fathers, how are they going to repatriate them at the end of all of this with their families?
Mm-hmm. I actually just today read an interesting piece that was basically saying even when the war ends, there are going to be a couple different things happening, and the fact that the whole article was saying that these men, if they survive and if they are alive, will have a couple options, and that is that many of them will most likely go and follow their wives wherever they are in Europe or perhaps even in the US, because by that time, most likely they will have steady jobs and basically will be the breadwinners, right? So, and that is the reality. For many of these men, I think that's what's going to happen. They will follow. Now, there are a lot of them who will want to stay and who will rebuild, right? And so for those, I know a lot of people that at least some of them that I've spoken to, they said the first thing when it's safe that we want to do is to go back, So it's going to be, I think, a mix, a little bit of everything. But I think that the reality in Europe especially is that there are a couple million of refugees that are there to stay, and I don't think they'll be going back. Which is not a bad thing, because again, any refugee brings so much more to the society where they live than they may take. And I think, even from what I've read, there are so many countries in Europe right now, kind of like here, there are places that are looking for work, for employees, but there's no one there to work. And so right now, a lot of these refugees are coming in and saying, I'll work that, because nobody else is willing, but I will. So, but yeah, I think that's what's going to happen. Yeah.
Is that where they would prefer to be? Or right now while the war is going on? Or do they want to stay close by so they can see what's going on.
Right, right. So the question was whether they want to come, for example, to United States. Some do, I'm sure. You know, it's like this, you know, a land that a lot of people want to come here. But then there are others who don't, because they want to be as close to Ukraine so that they can return. And for some, you know, if they're settled in Europe already, and especially there was actually a good number of refugees that I talked to that said, we want to stay in Poland, Czech Republic, or Slovakia because that's the language that is similar to ours. So they even said, we don't want to go to Germany because it's a different, completely different language. We don't want to go to France or whatever, you know, even though life in Germany might be better, you know, than in Poland, but for them it's the familiarity and culture and language. So, it's probably a mix. Now, I have talked to one person that actually I got connected to them through one of our members. They are still in Lviv, and they have a sister here in Michigan. And so we were in contact trying to get her out of Ukraine, and then most likely she would be applying for a visa to come to the US so that she can be with her sister, right? She's still in Lviv. I keep touching base with her, you know, every so often, and she says, I don't want to leave. Like literally she wrote, I'm a Ukrainian, I'm in Lviv, I'm in no hurry to leave. As long as we are still relatively safe here. And she said, if I go, I'll most likely go to Czech Republic, you know, but for now we're staying put. So even that, you have a lot of people who are there and they do not want to leave. Even though given for her, she probably it would be fairly easy to come to the US if you have a relative here. But they don't want to. My hometown, about 3.5 hours, roughly. Yeah, that's, you know, you're not talking driving on the highway, so it's closer, but, you know, by the time you get there and all that. Even though I've forgotten how crazy Europeans drive. I mean, it's like, I felt like I was, anyways, I was driving very slowly and keeping the distance while, anyways. So, yeah, but it's about 3.5 hours, yeah. Yeah, kind of, yes, it could be like that, yeah. If there aren't any other questions, and again, you know, you can contact me anytime if you have any questions or anything. I'll be happy to share. And I just want to say once again, you know, thank you for your support. The thank you letters will be coming out here soon, and then also as soon as we know more, again, now it's more kind of connecting those dots and continuing and coming up with more specific plans. Okay, this is what the next step is going to be. This is how we'll continue to partner with people that are on the ground there. We will be letting everyone know, and we'll be making sure that everyone is aware, you know, of what is happening. But as of right now, the things are changing so quickly. That's the one thing. The one day you have a plan, and then you realize the next day that no longer is the case. And again, that's just that's what the situation is like. But we will keep everyone posted. And again, I'm just very grateful for all the prayers and the support. I did say the last thing I'll say is that when you have so many people praying for you, you can actually feel this protection over you. And it can be little things. You know, I put a lot of, like, couple thousand miles on, and on the road being safe. When you're pulling into a small European parking lot with a big Sprinter van, all of a sudden there's an empty spot every time when you pull in. I'm like, all right, I know someone is praying right now for a easy in and easy out of that parking lot, because again, I don't know how, again, Europeans live, but it's like you better have a small car or you're out of luck. And so I felt that. I felt really just a wonderful, just that everything went well and I was safe. And, I mean, there are little hiccups here and there, but considering it was still, and the last thing I'll say is that, do not let pastor talk. But the last thing I wanted to say is that, hopefully that even just seeing through the pictures, that you can know that you were there as well, right? Obviously, I was there in person, but what I was doing and the help I was able to give and the relationships I was establishing were, for all of us. And that's why I'm looking forward to this new partnership with, whether it's in Slovakia or even bringing people here, that we can continue what has been started. So you were all a part of that, whether those of you who are here or those who might be watching online. All right, if there are no further questions, I'd like to offer a word of prayer, and then there are some cookies downstairs. If you'd like, you can join us for some cookies and coffee. Let us pray. Lord God, Heavenly Father, we just give you thanks. You are an amazing God, and you provide us opportunities to be your presence in this broken world. Give us opportunities to be your presence for those who are hurting, for those who are in need, for those who might be even fleeing their homes because of war. And so, Lord God, we pray for your wisdom and guidance and courage as we continue to walk this journey, trying to figure out the best ways we can aid and help those who are fleeing Ukraine. Also, we pray that you'll watch especially over those who are in the imminent danger, that you will keep them safe and protect them, and that you'll especially watch over the men who are fighting for the freedom of their land. We ask all these things, Lord, in your most holy name. Amen. All right. Thank you guys for coming. Thank you.